Thank you for joining us for this session on ocean intelligence using space data. I'd like you to imagine a small fishing village here in the Indo-Pacific. The ocean is their lifeline, but in recent years, waters have got warmer, storms are more unpredictable, and fish are harder to find. From the shore, the changes feel overwhelming, but from space, satellites can trace the shifting currents, they can track illegal vessels, and they can even spot early signs of coral bleaching. With the help of AI, that data can become life-saving intelligence, warning a village before a cyclone, guiding fishermen and fisherwomen to sustainable stocks, or helping a government protect fragile reefs. This is what we mean by ocean intelligence using space data. But intelligence, in my view, is worthless unless we complement it with in situ knowledge and unless we equip those who need it most with the ability to use it. Today, we're here to explore how this perspective from above can empower communities on the ground at local level, especially across the Indo-Pacific, where the stakes couldn't be higher. So please join me in welcoming our panel. Christian Høgli Hansen from the Norwegian Space Agency, please. Madine Massé, President of the Maldives Space Research Organization. Dawn McIntosh, Director of Space Systems at Fugler, Australia. And Atsushi Takata, EVP for Global Strategy and Space Utilization at Space Data Inc. And now I get to sit down. So we are hoping that our colleague from Tonga will still join us, but we're going to kick off the conversation anyway. I want to start actually with Madine, as you're the representative of, an island region, an island in this region. You've told me before that the Maldives relies on key industries like tourism and fishing, yet the Maldives are facing existential threats. So beyond the long-term monitoring, what is the single most crucial daily or weekly ocean data product that could really provide your nation with what it needs going forward?
Where do I begin? So I think there's something very important to understand with how the Maldives uses the ocean. And perhaps there's a slight difference in, I'm not sure there are too many countries that can say this, but we have the most sustainable fisheries sector in the world. We don't really have a problem with fish stock within the Maldives. The problem that we have is because we only have pole and line fishing in the Maldives, our fishermen work extra hard to catch their daily catch. That means that they rely on traditional knowledge passed on from generation to generation on where the bait fish is, which you have to get up early in the morning before sunrise to catch, sometimes a dangerous activity, and then actually go out to find where the schools of tuna are. One of the issues with climate change is that it has disrupted the weather systems, disrupted how the oceans within the Maldives, which is 99% of our territory, which means that now the fishermen cannot rely on the indigenous passed down knowledge of where the fish are and their movements. And this is where space data has a real role to play. We know that tuna do not like certain types of ocean state, sea state, like higher temperatures, for example. If we know where the higher temperature spots in the ocean are, the fisheries ministry, the agencies involved in helping the fishermen can provide the timely data needed for them to make better decisions. For a local fisherman in the Maldives, time is money and also fuel, which means that by being able to point where the fish might be or where the fish will definitely not be, they can save precious time and fuel in trying to find them. And so I would say sea surface temperature on a much higher frequency than we currently have is vital for our fishermen. Right now, unfortunately, our Ministry of Fisheries have had to rely on fish aggregating devices, which is not something we've had to use, but we have no choice because we need to help the fishermen better use their resources. So I would say that's probably one area we could really help them with.
Thank you, thank you. Dawn, can I come straight to you off the back of what Madin has just said? I wanted to ask you about looking at resilience, but also fishing, like we're hearing. What is the current time lag between satellite data acquisition and the delivery of actionable insights to a client or to a government agency, and what technologies are key to shortening that loop?
We certainly do need to solve this problem, or this is one of many problems we need to solve. From a technology perspective, several years ago now, maybe 5+ years ago, we were talking days from when the data was requested to when it was collected. Over the ocean, that problem still exists to some level. However, the current there's a couple companies and couple programs that are really trying to reduce this problem. So there's some companies, LatConnect 60, which is here in Australia, is focusing on the marine side, the ocean viewing. So Earth observing satellites exist everywhere, and then so what that means. Sorry, let me step back for a second. With Earth observing, we are down to hours from when you put in the request to when you get the data. That's not true in the oceans, but it's becoming a reality that we need that to be true, not just for things like ocean temperatures, which is really important, but also for disaster relief, as you were speaking to. And so if companies like LatConnect 60 or Fugro has a product called EOMAP, which is doing bathymetry measurements at all times, which can help out. Those types of things we can get from a request to the data in your hands in hours. But those are built on constellations that take time to put together, and we're just starting that journey. So that's where we really are and where we need to get to.
Thank you, thank you. Christian, can I come to you? Now, there is a tremendous amount of goodwill in the global space sector. We talk about the Indo-Pacific, the small island states, and their needs, and so on. And I know that you, as NOSA, Norway, you've invested a tremendous amount in very high-resolution data, and you've been generous in making it available to those who need it. How do you react to what you've heard from Madin, knowing that this is a situation in this region?
First of all, I think it's, well, your introduction was very to the point, that you really need to look at this in a total value chain perspective, from actually acquiring the data and then distributing and then handling it preferably on a very near real-time, under real-time conditions to the end user. So getting hold of the data, what we're looking at in Norway is, as you say, we have been providing through the NICFI program very high resolution data. These are acquired commercially. So from Norway, we think it's important to hedge our position that we have available satellite data from the Copernicus program. We're a participant to the Copernicus program, and we are using Sentinel data both for our own purposes, and this is being part of the core Copernicus services. But as we have discussed previously, the availability and the accessibility of high-resolution data, for instance, for the Maldives is exceedingly important. But I think it's, in what way they are important is long-term, is acute in terms of, emergency situation, or long-term. That's when you get into the real-time element. So I think in terms of the end user, you have to really consider the total value chain. What are your data sources, and how are you going to put this together in what we call, in our industry, called multi-mission setup, in terms that you can either source it from one satellite source, or you can actually hedge between different sources in order to provide the end user.
Thank you. Let's build on that at Sushi. There are many different sources of data available. We can think of SAR, optical, RF monitoring, and even IoT sensors. You're a commercial company, even though you've been working with the UN and giving us free digital twins. Thank you so much. Still a commercial company. But from a commercial standpoint, where do you see the greatest growth and innovation over the next 5 years? And what percentage of your client base is going to stay private sector, and what percentage do you see as being governments and coastal communities and Indo-Pacific islands, etc.?
Right. So first of all, the importance of the data is increasing in the both commercial and government. That's I can say. Like you said, the RF, SAR, opticals, hyperspectrum. A lot of the technology is evolving, and the mixture, the data fusion, is I think very very important for and for make the people to the right decisions. And that's why we also doing a lot of R&D researches to put those data and to utilize it for the digital twin solutions for the both government and commercial sectors. And thanks to your work, that we are very happy to work with you for the support small island nations. Unfortunately, Tonga is not here, but yeah, hopefully he will make up. And answering the question for the customer segmentation is that so far, the most of the client is the government for the decision making, but gradually we've been getting a lot of our interest from the commercial sectors as well, including the coastal regions, and beyond that, we have a lot of our inquiries from the energy regions for the ocean lines. Like wind power domes, they would like to get a very high resolution digital twin so that they can predict the future and how it goes. So we see a lot of our demand are getting bigger and bigger. And yeah, regions, right? Right now, the biggest demand is in Japan, but I can see that can be increasing more in the globally, like you said, in the Pacific, Africa's, those nations.
Thank you. So, Madden, let me come back to you. We hear often from space agencies that there's free data available, it's open source, it's ready to use, just use it, you know. I talk about a data divide, but they counter that with there's so much data available for free. Why is that not enough? I'm
sorry, Christian, I might have to address this question by referring NICFI a little bit as an example. I think the issue isn't that there isn't enough data, is that there isn't enough relevant data for island nations like ours. Okay. I think fundamentally this is not an issue caused by commercial companies or agencies intentionally. Traditionally, a lot of the satellites have been sun-synchronous, serving polar orbits, and unfortunately, especially for the Maldives being on the equator, it means that we do have an unoptimized product that we get. But also for other island nations, because islands are really small and satellites struggle to identify islands and calibrate over islands. Over large pieces of the ocean, as you said, it is a real struggle. So there is an issue where, again, there is an opportunity where island nations can provide in situ data to validate, to calibrate. But a good example is, NICFI is incredible for large continents, large land masses, and the intention was for these forests and everything. But for an island nation like ours, NICFI, sometimes a whole island might be 1 pixel. Which is not the adequate resolution that we need. Mm-hmm. And so the reason we're working together in the Alliance as well is so that we can address this in the next generation of what is available publicly as well. And so, yes, there's a lot of data, more data than we can process, but not all of them are useful for nations like ours. Yeah.
And Christian, can I invite you to respond?
Well, I think you're pointing to something that's very important, and we did discuss this at the conference in Oslo a couple of years ago. All the data is there, but is it useful? Can it actually be used for anything? So that then it boils down, I think, that for a nation like yours, you really have to consider, what is available and through which agents. I mean, for instance, through UNOSA, the UN, that can provide a certain type of services, but you will probably find, as we do, that the more generic Earth observation data or what you can get through the institutional data is not enough for your particular consideration. It may be partly relevant, but in that case, that is when you really have to consider, are you going to go into some kind of cooperation in order to make those data available? And this is becoming increasingly available because higher resolution, more spectral content, but you really have to consider what kind of structure you have on the data.
Thank you. Can I stay with you, Christian, for a second? in today's geopolitical world, we hear that civil budgets are going down, more investment is going into defense, and so we see space agencies positioning themselves to secure more potentially defense budgets. What's your feeling on that, and whether it will impact the availability going forward of more sophisticated solutions and more high-resolution data?
Well, it may be a threat, but I think it also may be an opportunity, because there's a lot of talk on civil military dual use, and I really think that we need to exploit that to the highest extent, because that will save cost. In Norway, we have our challenges. A lot of what we're doing nationally is on maritime surveillance in the high north, bad weather. We need to have a mix between SAR observation, low-light imager. We just launched our NorSat 4, which has a very high-resolution optical low-light imager, and pure optical. And what we are doing in Norway is we are a civilian agency, but we have formalized our cooperation with the armed forces. They have their particular needs, but they also have their particular funding, which means that they can help us in order to facilitate this. But then you have the discussion on data policy. That becomes exceedingly important, because they are maybe paying for sourcing the data, and then they have their particular use. But then once that is filtered through the policy regime and their operational issues, that is when we are also cooperating with our National Coastal Authority, which is a civil organization. And then that feeds into their system, which is a multi-layered GIS system called Barents Watch, and where you have all the different information on, like you're addressing, in terms of water currents, water temperature, weather forecasting, high-resolution imagery, SAR, and everything. And so I really think that you can play both sides, but it is a challenge that sometimes the armed forces will sort of control the data.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, when we talk about very high resolution imagery, we know that either it's military, so it's not accessible, or it's commercial and it's too expensive. So maybe there is an opportunity, given that people will want more higher resolution Earth observation satellites for surveillance, perhaps, right?
Yeah, and to be honest, I think it's a challenge. In the Earth observation market, there has been a significant technology push. There's a lot of great initiatives on ever higher resolution, optical spectrum, and so forth. The question is there a market? If you follow the money on this, you will find that most of these contracts end up being paid by the government, and this is a fact. I really hope, and there's a lot of prospects in selling this as a purely commercial. In a purely commercial market, but so far this isn't actually working, because if you look at the planets, the Maxar, and all the commercial, they're tremendous in the technology development and the speed by which and eyesight by which they actually develop these payloads and launch satellites. But the question still remains: is this viable in a purely commercial fashion?
Thank you. Dawn, can I come back to you? You're working for a commercial company, yet the kind of issues that we discuss go to the heart of the Sustainable Development Goals. Your duty as a commercial company is to your shareholders. You're meant to maximize profits and growth. How do you reconcile that with the needs of countries who are often from the global south, who do not have the means to be paying for the kind of services that commercial companies offer?
Very challenging problem, of course. So Figaro is in 40 different countries, and those countries, those are locally staffed. And so one of the ways that you solve these problems is by using local talent. And if you can use local talent and you can share that commercial knowledge from that local pool, as well as all the other local pools, then you increase the chance of value add at any of these potentially more isolated or more areas where there isn't the opportunity to have the large data sets or the large volume of people working the problem. You can still take advantage of that, and you can use the local pool to do so, and that brings the cost down.
Thank you. And Atsushi, coming to you, I mean, you're making the state-of-the-art, very sophisticated new products. Okay. Many end users, especially in developing countries, can't afford such bespoke commercial satellite data services like the ones that you produce with your digital twins. So what innovative business models or public-private partnership structures does space data see as most promising for making ocean intelligence commercially viable and accessible to those who need it the most?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think that's a lot of challenges that we will face because we have a lot of demands from those countries, but we cannot provide free for those countries, unfortunately, as we are the private companies. So to answer that question, maybe the public-private partnership is going to be the one solution, or maybe like working with INOSER, we can, for example, just create an organization or pool where everybody can go there and to get the data as necessary basis. For example, that type of the consortium might work with a lot of support from the government. So we have to see how we can work together and how we can collaborate to solve the program and to provide the solutions for those countries. That's what I believe. And like Christian mentioned, the data is very, very expensive. Well, not expensive, but they sell data per pixels. But I believe we have to provide a solution not per pixel, but per impact for the regions so that they can choose and they can get a necessary solution.
Thank you, thank you. That's really good because it strikes me that the challenges that we're facing, they're so big, and yet there's so much money, so much philanthropy, so much development aid, which is actually going to these kind of challenges. And when I speak with commercial partners who are enabling the solutions, they can't access it because donors are not going to give to private companies directly. So I think your point, Atsushi, about partnering with entities like UNUSA, who can provide a credible front, and knowing that you're not going to rip us off, for want of a better word, is perhaps a good way of doing this public-private partnerships. Let's change track a little bit and go to one of the application areas, environmental crime, IUU fishing. Madden, let me come back to you. You talked about how the Maldives has, I didn't know that, the most sustainable fishing in the world. Very interesting. So given that your archipelago has a vast exclusive economic zone, how do you see space data enhancing maritime domain awareness to combat illegal fishing and ensure the sustainability of your vital marine resources?
I mean, I don't think there's any other alternative. We have an exclusive economic zone of 1 million square kilometers and a coast guard the size of probably less than 1,000. So if we do the maths, it doesn't add up. We are very blessed that, one, we have, in my opinion, one of the best coast guards in the world, at least in our region, that have for generations passed down the understanding of our oceans, the currents, the reefs. We do have some natural protections in the way the seasons, when they change, the wind directions, it does throw off some of the international fishing vessels if they don't really understand. And so there are some natural mechanisms through which we've been blessed, but unfortunately the reality is more and more there are encroachments happening in our EZ. We do rely heavily on AIS and a lot of the data that we have available. So the Coast Guard relies on AIS and coastal radar. But unfortunately, because of the way the Maldives is geographically dispersed vertically, we don't have a lot of stations for coastal radar. And so right now, the Coast Guard, through just like Christian said, we also work very closely with defense. In the case of the Maldives, defense is also in charge of maritime security and environmental security. Mm-hmm. And so our line ministry is the Ministry of Defense. So we work closely almost day to day with the Maldives National Defense Force, which the Coast Guard falls under. And so essentially, without space data, they are not going to be able to not only monitor the illegal fishing and IUU activity, but they can't also adjudicate them, because that's a very big challenge that usually goes understated. A lot of transnational crime that happens on the seas require certain types of data to actually get them adjudicated. We have international vessels that will go onto a coral reef, destroy them, causing millions of damage, incredible biodiversity loss, and the fines are either peanuts or sometimes we can't even find them. And so for a lot of these reasons, and it's not just vessels running aground, it's also drift nets, right? Like, how do you make sure that the islands and the ecosystem get repaid for the damage that are caused? You need space data. You need satellite data to be able to pinpoint when these things have happened, what happened exactly. And we do need the technology to also evolve and adapt. And we do see this happening. But like I think everyone here said, there is a huge cost barrier. And I do think there needs to be innovative financing mechanisms, partnership mechanisms to solve that. And one of the ways we're doing that is by trying to add value through this in situ validation, because a lot of these models that exist around the world right now don't really work with the current conditions. And for us, we have a really good experimental hotbed, so to speak. So we can provide a lot of data, and in return, maybe we can get data as well. So that's been the model thus far.
Okay, thank you. You know, yesterday I had a bilateral meeting with Tonga, and even though they're not here, they said that they also care about fishing. This is a massive issue for them as well. But even though they have access to data, they don't necessarily have the licenses required to be able to continually use and access that data. This is a problem which we don't often hear talked about. Is that an issue for you as well?
It's a very big issue.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
I'll probably get in trouble a little bit with my team perhaps as well. So there's two elements to that. We have the licenses of using satellite data, the EULA that we have to sign. Sometimes they're internal use only, and sometimes it can be quite confusing. What does it mean? But because a lot of our work requires awareness building, right? Communicating, so it does require some effort and understanding and capacity building internally in the Maldives. But a bigger issue with licensing is, it might be a little bit sensitive to touch on this, but is IP. With climate financing, for example, Arti, you mentioned, a lot of the reasons, even though countries like us, we get the money, a big challenge in working with commercial partners, or maybe a reason commercial partners might hesitate, is because of the IP laws. If we co-develop an algorithm, for example, a model that works for the Maldives, how does commercialization affect our ability to use it? So these are conversations that we've found through our past couple of projects challenging. And like you said, it is very understated. And we are also just finding out that this is an issue. And I do think it requires not just innovation in financing, but also in how we work together. Like, how do we balance the interests of the commercial entities, which obviously need to be balanced for them to be sustainable, but with also non-commercial actors like ourselves to get this data timely manner for the people who need it the most. So it is a very big problem, and we are trying to actively solve it.
Yeah, we always just focus on the availability of data, what kind of data, etc., but we don't actually unpack and realize that there are other issues that are quite critical as well. So we were talking about fish. Christian, I know you like fish. Norway, very strong global shipping, fishing industry. How is NOSA providing its national industries with competitive advantage through space solutions and data?
Well, I think you need to qualify the question a little bit, because we are a facilitator of funding in order for the space industry to develop and facilitate different types of services. Of course, we're looking to our national industry. We are world leading in vessel traffic management, coastal traffic management, and so forth. And when I used to work in industry, and I was in charge of the space division, and also the companies that were working on maritime traffic. And I think the better perspective is probably how can these types of technologies and services serve the general maritime community. In Norway, we work closely with the IMO our coastal administration, they provide data from our AIS satellites and they receive things in return. We are developing, we had a great program a few years ago with Singapore called e-navigation. And the whole idea was trying to look at, all the types of different data sources that you have. It doesn't have to be satellites, but a multi-sensor fusion system in order to look at what can you actually cover from the shore. Historically, you have AIS monitoring, you have radars, you can have optical, everything RF, and then how do you migrate that into the deep ocean where you no longer have visibility from the shore? And that's when the satellites come in, not only in the actual monitoring of the traffic, but also in communication and sort of merging this into a larger system. So I think that as a space agency, our mandate or ambition is to facilitate for that the overall ecosystem in terms of both the authorities, but also those competing in the market. They can have the best means of or way of competing by use of, for instance, satellite data.
Thank you. So there's more than one issue there. It's about efficiencies, communications. And
yes, because I mean, if you talk about maritime protection and sustainability, time to port is exceedingly important in terms of fuel consumption, and a lot of this, and also this program that I was talking about was how can you plan do travel or plan your routing such that you don't have to spend excessive fuel before you can actually dock and do your thing.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of the overall maritime protection and climate and everything is actually putting this together into smart systems. And that's where you get into the use of AI. This started actually more than 10 years ago, where you start doing machine learning in order to look at the trade routes, how are the ship maneuvering, and how can you do long-term planning in order to optimize routing, for instance.
yeah, and that's like an indirect contribution to the SDGs, right? When you think about reducing pollution and other harmful substances and so on.
Well, actually, it's a direct contribution because you're cutting fuel. And you are seeing that the pollution from maritime traffic is going down for various reasons. This is one of them.
Right, excellent. Dawn, can I come back to you? Can you talk a little bit about the market segments of Fugro when it comes to ocean, marine, maritime? Where are you seeing the greatest needs?
The greatest needs? Well, I actually think the idea of, Christian mentioned the data heterogeneity. That's a real challenge, but it's specifically a challenge with what Fugro is doing is because we're combining space data with in situ marine data. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, you end up with problems with data resolution, et cetera. But specifically, you end up with problems around position and timing. Mm-hmm. And that position and timing problem is a real problem. You need to know where you are, you need to know when you were there, and you need to know that in both in the satellite passing over as well as your in situ data. And so I think that that challenge is a continual challenge and one that we're working to address within Fugro with our Space Star system, which has really improved position, velocity, and resolution, or position, velocity, and timing. But that's one we want to continue to take on. I think I'd push to that one to the top of the list.
Okay, interesting. Atsushi, coming back to you, can you give us an example of how one of your private sector clients, for example, in shipping or in insurance or aquaculture, is using your services to maybe to de-risk their operations or create new efficiencies, and how you think that the same application could be adapted for public good like environmental protection?
Yeah, so one of the biggest customer right now, well, actually going to be our customer right now is the energy system infrastructure customer who has a huge windmill in the coast and supporting the government local entity in the region. And they would like to do the prediction of the temperature, ocean thing, and wind, etc., into the one single digital twin. So we need a lot of data, not only for the satellite data, but also the other data as well. And that, I believe, can be contributed a lot for the environmental side as well, because we can predict how much, for example, the vessels are going around, how we can manage the entire ecosystem efficiently so that we can save the energy, for example. So we see a lot of the value and importance on our solution. So we would love to expand that technology for the other regions as well, so that we can support both our very sustainable energy system creation.
And if I can ask you both a question together from the industrial side, where do you think governments should invest most to enable commercial companies to address some of the SDG type of challenges concerning the oceans? Where do you think it would be beneficial for the efforts and the resources to go? Please.
That's very challenging.
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of the space technology, I would say going back to the previous conversation that we had in the beginning, I still believe that satellite data is not enough yet. Mm-hmm. For example, we have an inquiry from a country in the Middle East, and we wanted to create a digital twin, and we asked the commercial satellite image provider, hey, do you have all the data there? And they don't have it. So we cannot create a digital twin and even in the near time. So we need more infrastructure on the space-based infrastructure for sure, and that's I think the government should still invest more. And the other point is that the licensing is very critical for us as well. So we'd like the government to focus on the creating the new applications to utilize how we can use the infrastructure, space-based infrastructure for the benefit of life on Earth.
Mm-hmm. And before you answer, Dawn, we heard in the past that the Pacific Islands, there really is a shortage of data for this region. We heard how Copernicus switches off its satellites to save battery going over this region. Is there still a shortage of data for this region in your view?
Absolutely. I think Medine spoke to this, where specifically around the equator, you're going to end up with shortages in general. But almost all of our satellite systems are set up to observe the land, not the waters, which means not the islands. And so we're going to have this challenge until we start. It's really about the number of revisits, right? So they're going over this area, but not taking data. So that means we're short on data, and so absolutely, that's an area that we can improve upon. And again, there's constellations of satellites being built and flown right now that are tackling that, where their focus is they'll be turning off their observations over land because they really want to collect the data for the on the water side. And really, what they're looking at is disaster problems, right? Well, disasters and regulatory observations of mm-hmm. platforms and ships. So those types of things, I think we're going to see a change, but we are behind the curve, and there's a lot of missing data, especially if you look at a global data set and look at the amount of it's for land versus ocean, for certain.
So I don't understand entirely, because I listen to Planet in different fora talking about how they're mapping the whole world multiple times a day, and then we hear about, I think it's 30 new oceanographic missions which are being launched in coming years. So there is a lot of investment into this segment. What do you think, Christian?
First of all, I think that you really need to consider the total value chain and assessing what are you actually trying to achieve, because you mentioned the public-private partnership. I think that's an excellent idea, but it's only excellent if it's a true opportunity for the company that is investing in the program to have a return on the investment. Otherwise, it won't work. So it's nothing wrong with government funding these types of programs. And I think in many instances, to actually calculating a profit is almost impossible. When we do our proposal for our government, sometimes these are tangible numbers. We can say that, okay, these industrial contracts, you can qualify them and they will be of this magnitude, so this is a good way of investing money. In many other cases, we do socioeconomic analysis where you do a lot of assumptions saying that, well, we think that this is worthwhile for the policy and the politics that Norway will apply, for instance, in foreign aid or protection of the environment. So I really think there needs to be a balanced consideration. And that's how the agencies need to play along and cooperate with the commercial operators, the commercial satellite owners, and those who are providing the data. Just trying to commercialize this and say, hey, you can fix this, that won't work. You really have to have government standing behind it. We're seeing this in NICFI. NICFI is not only a satellite program, it's a large program protecting, where the intention is to protect the tropical rainforest globally from plus to minus 30 degrees latitude. And this is something that Norway wants to do, not by themselves, but jointly with Germany and other countries, investing in that because it supports the SDGs. Likewise with illegal fishery, which you touched upon, which is the same thing. Maybe that's easier to calculate because you can actually say that there are so many million tons illegal fishery being conducted every year, so you could actually do a calculation on that. But still, it's the same thing, that some governments have to stand behind and say, we are going to facilitate this because we can draw on other programs or other investments, like in the Blue Justice Program, where we're using what we're doing, as I mentioned before, on the national program for monitoring our oceans. We're now transferring through this program. We're doing an experiment now with the local hub in Jamaica, using Norwegian satellites for monitoring illegal fishery, and then jointly with the policing agencies and authorities in Jamaica, trying to see how can that actually work.
I'm going to pick on something you said. You talked about measuring, like the impact, for example, with IUU fishing. And I always give the Peruvian example that by observing using SAR satellites at night and so on, they were able to really enforce their law about vessels coming into Peruvian waters. And within 1 year, they saw the number of illegal vessels go from 200 down to 40. Tremendous. However, this is a global problem. Those vessels may have stopped causing a problem for Peru. They're still going to be causing a problem somewhere else. So we need a coordinated solution, a coordinated action to embed space by design into policymaking, at least regionally, in order to really make a positive impact on the global challenge, don't you think?
Yes, this is absolutely true, and you're seeing this, and exactly when the people doing the illegal fishery, when they know they're being detected in this territory, they will move to the next one. But this is why I think that is the strength of the Blue Justice Program, because I think there are 65 coastal nations that have signed on to this. They're covering in excess of 35% of the total economic zone, extended economic zones. Exactly as you say, that you need to sort of standardize, but then you have the real-time element, because you need to act within less than 20 or 15 minutes. Yeah. This is really, really hard, because if you have a satellite monitoring the perpetrator, you have to fly over a ground station. That takes another 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and then you have the value chain or the data chain actually going back. That doesn't work. So we're just at a starting point, but we really need to get down to less than 10 minutes.
Yeah, and this is where, I was going to come to you, Madden, because you were talking about how you've got the best Coast Guard in the world, and these are the guys who need to act on this kind of actionable intelligence, right? Please.
I'll qualify. I'll qualify that statement by saying maybe per capita, because we are a small Coast Guard. No, I mean, Christian, you made some really excellent points, and I really like that conversation there, because you're right. I'll give you a really interesting number. Right now, I would say the average amount of time that our Coast Guard has to wait after making a request for an optical high-resolution imagery ranges between 1 day to 7 days. It is nowhere near 20 minutes. And by the time either the illegal fishing vessel is in Peru or somewhere else. And so it's you're right.
It's not in Peru.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They're tracking it. Maybe somewhere else. Maybe in Tonga. And so I think. So I do think there's a huge gap there, and I think NICFI is an excellent model in how governments can cooperate on a global problem. And I think the key for that is we've identified the value that tropical rainforests provide. We have not done the same for a tropical ocean or any part of the ocean in the same manner. I don't think that it is difficult to quantify what the ocean can provide. I just don't think we've done it meaningfully.
Can you explain that a little bit, what you mean?
So for example, with the tropical rainforest, we know how much carbon dioxide it removes, how much oxygen it puts, how much it adds to the global climate, to our fight against the global warming, and also all the value that it provides to biodiversity and the countries that they're situated in. And I'm pretty sure that when NICFI was created, and maybe Christian, you can speak to it more, there was a cost-benefit analysis done. I don't think the same level has been achieved with ocean. The problems that happen in the Maldives, the problems that happen with the our fish movement, our illegal fishing activity, are not a local problem. It is a global problem. When our coral reefs die, it affects India, it affects Sri Lanka. Yeah. But we have not quantified that, because the only way we can make the money work is by showing that by solving our problems, it's not Maldives as the market, it's the globe as the market, right? You solve our problem, you actually impact the world, right? You can solve the problems in India, in Sri Lanka, in Peru even perhaps. And so I think that's the level we need to get to. We need to use space data to justify using space data first, and then maybe we'll be able to make it sustainable.
Yeah, because I do think that even if you solve in one region, doesn't it just mean that you're increasing the pressure on the neighboring region?
Well, maybe we have to do it in every region, then they'll have nowhere to hide.
Yeah. Well, we're going to work on that through our Space for Oceans Alliance, right?
That's right. And you mentioned the Space for Ocean that was signed at the UN Ocean Conference in Nice, in France, this June. I think it's a great example. We're not totally sure in which direction this will go, but we do have a joint ambition of the intention of pooling and sharing together all the good resources in order to protect all elements of the ocean, from microplastic to illegal fishery to reducing, the whatever you need to reduce in order to support the SDGs.
Thank you. Would our commercial providers like to come in on anything that you've just heard?
So I honestly, I don't know how to say what the commercial solution is to a illegal fishing problem, other than saying we can collect data for you, but we just created a different problem. Maybe not as great as illegal fishing, but a greater problem. So I guess I don't have a solution to that, but I do think there is something to be said for the idea that we're going to use technology to get there. That, I guess, I'm going to lean into from a commercial perspective. Technology is our friend here, and I think that's where, when we look at our governmental agencies and their support of advancing technologies, I know there's a lot of value and benefit in regulatory practices, but I do think we need to embrace technology and really let that let it loose so it can solve some of these problems that don't have necessarily a obvious commercial bent to them.
Yes. I mean, for me, the ocean is riddled with issues that technology is required to solve.
Exactly.
So effectively, that's a massive market, isn't it?
You're exactly right. And I think, honestly, what we're going to find is we're going to be looking at, oil spills, and we're going to, find vessels doing things or being places they're not supposed to be. You don't solve one problem when you use a new technology. It expands to address and adapt for a bunch of different problems for us specifically in our oceans.
Mm-hmm. Atsushi, from what you're hearing here, where do you think? What do you think the next big innovation is going to be? Is it going to be in how we work together? Is it going to be in technology? What do you think? I mean, you're young, you're visionary.
Oh, I'm not that young. I have one daughter, by the way. Well, so to answer is I think both technology and collaboration. First of all, we would love to work with the Maldives Research Space Organization for sure, and there's a lot of lessons learned that we can get by the collaboration that we can implement that lessons to the other nations,
Yeah.
even in Japan as well. So we are very much excited to working together with these friends. And the other point is the technology that's right. There's a lot of opportunities in ocean, but I think there's a lot of the things that we cannot identify yet.
Okay.
So hopefully, using the new technologies like AI or others, that we can come to the new solutions that we
Yeah.
can provide together. So yeah, we will definitely work on those.
Excellent. So we only have a few minutes left. I want to ask each of you if there was a genie in a bottle who could give you a wish, what would your wish be in terms of really advancing on what you believe is critical challenge ahead of you? Who wants to go first?
Well, I can try. It was mentioned this morning that the amount of data is just overwhelming. It may not be the right data, but I think more efficient use of the space infrastructure, because if you're looking at it, we're talking about tens of thousands of satellites for communication, Earth observation, everything. It's probably not the right way to go. We really need to be more efficient in terms of making robust systems, but also making more efficient use of the hardware. That meaning having artificial intelligence one way or the other guiding how you're actually exploiting that. In that sense, you probably will be able to reduce your investments, making sure that you can exploit those data to the best of many end users. That is one thing. The other thing is the data that you already have, proper data archiving in order to do data mining on a smart way and doing statistics and working on both historical data and efficient use of infrastructure going forward.
Thank you. Dawn?
Can I jump in? Because mine's also very data-centric, which is data is not information. Data, and so when we say we have lots and lots of data, that doesn't mean we have turned it into information. So if I had a genie, it would do just that. It would make that data into something usable, consumable, actionable. And I think, as Sushi was pointing out, AI is providing that. Now, it needs to be validated when we say that. It doesn't become information just because it goes through an AI system. But I do think that that is a big part of that genie story for us. And I think we should be leaning into that so that we can move faster, turn that data, lots and lots of data, into something that we can do something with.
Thank you. Sushi?
Wish, right? Well, it might be difficult, and maybe I'm too dreamer, but space is supposed to be no boundaries. But when I'm in this industry, I can feel a lot of the boundaries. So it's very unfortunate, and I think I can understand that. For example, when I work with the Japanese government, hopefully there's no Japanese government people, but there's a lot of boundaries for example, budget that can be used. And I think it's true, they're right.
Yeah.
But space is supposed to be no boundaries again. So hopefully we can find the solutions. Each country, each nations work together to solve a single solution and unite both private and public knowledge to tackle those. And I think you can do this.
No pressure.
She's your genie.
Yes.
Okay, Madin, the last word.
It's no pressure. I think, so I'm going to follow the theme. Data is not information, but information is not intelligence, so I can tie to the panel. I think my wish would be, I wish that the space sector and the ocean sector would talk more. We've seen a lot of solutions created on coral reefs, on the oceans, where, even for the Maldives, where when we ask, okay, so who from the Maldives did you work with to validate this or check this? And they're like, no one. This should work. And we show them exactly why and where it doesn't work, and people are surprised. And I think a lot of that pain and investment, we talk about making data more efficient. We also should make money, the investment more efficient by having conversations. So I do wish that the space sector and the ocean sector can collaborate better, respect each other's strengths, and try to extract as much intelligence out of information. And the key difference there is that intelligence is what will lead to action, because that's tailored for what the policymakers need or whoever needs the data to use. In the Maldives, the way we present that information might be different from where we present it in any other place. And that nuance you can only get by speaking to the people of the end users. And I think that would be my wish.
Fantastic. So we've said make more efficient use of technology and data which is available. We've said let data really be transformed with the help of AI, with human in the loop, I hope, into actionable intelligence. Bridging the gap between space and oceans, marine, maritime communities, and finally letting the funds, of which there's so much out there, really flow across the boundaries to reach those that they really need to reach. I would say that I think space agencies need to, Norway might be the exception, need to talk.
You didn't have to say that.
No, but I mean, listening to your Blue Justice program, etc., you may well be the exception. But I think, space agencies are always talking to science ministries and so on, and we need to be talking to development ministries, environmental ministries, and the rest of them, and really, telling the story better of the impact that can be made, and how space is, I said it this morning, it's not the final frontier of exploration, it's the final frontier of development, oceans included. Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking a wonderful panel. I hope you enjoyed this discussion.